What's going on YouTube? MStack here, and in this video we're going to be talking about general Madden strategy for offense. Okay, I'm also going to be doing another video for defense, so you make sure you check out the channel and look for that one as well. But in this video, I'm going to be starting with what you need to be doing for your offense before you ever step on the virtual gridiron, okay? Then we'll move into what happens on the field, different scenarios, beginning of the game, middle of the game, end of the game, and we'll kind of break down the general thought process most competitive players have when they approach a game, okay? Now, before you ever step on the field, playbook knowledge is absolutely key. Once you find an identity of what you want to do on offense, find a playbook that suits you best and dig deep into that playbook, practice different scenarios, practice against different formations on defense, because you're going to see a lot of different stuff online, and no one game is the same as the other. So if you go into a game and you've prepared to run on 3-4 odd, but somebody comes out in 4-4 split or the 4-6 bear and you can't run on that, then you haven't done a good enough job in the lab and preparing yourself. Also, practice, like I said, different scenarios, okay? If you can throw the ball in between the 20s and dot people up with deep corner routes, but you get into that shorter part of the field in the red zone and you have no red zone offense, where you're going to be settling for 3 all the time and you're going to end up losing a lot more games, okay? If you can't pick up pressure, if your formation is something that only allows you to block 6 and they send 7 and they have good adjustments, what are you going to do? You're going to probably turn the ball over a lot. Find a formation that will allow you to pick up pressure, but also will allow you to either run on certain blitzing defenses or to dot them up, okay? What I typically would use is the gun. From my playbook personally, I usually use the gun tight offset tight end, but that doesn't allow you to block one of the receivers. So I'll go to the gun tight doubles on, where the tight end is on the line of scrimmage and I can block 7 and still have good routes. All right. The getting into the game, okay? This doesn't matter if you receive first, if you kick first. This is how you need to approach it and how you need to train yourself to approach it. And this is how competitive players usually approach it. All right, come out your first offensive possession in maybe not your main scheme, but something that's balanced and effective. Just so you, because basically what you're doing on those first few plays, first 3 to 4 or 5 plays, you're gaining information on what your opponent likes to run on defense. Are they super aggressive? Do they like to blitz? Where are they using? Who do they have on defense? If you're in like MUT or something like that, you always want to be gaining information. And just a side note, if you are in MUT and you're playing anything on All-Pro, previous play is going to be on, so it's a safe bet to run the ball first and see what defense they're in. That way you can adjust going forward. If you're not, that's perfectly fine. Just come out in something conservative. What we do and what I do on stream is I come out in that RPO scheme from the gun doubles week, all right? If I see something like this, where they're being super aggressive, I know that I can run the RPO and I'll be fine. If they're, spread out, backed up like this, let's just say they're all over the place, there's a huge gap, okay, obviously I'm running the ball. I'm going to see what coverage they're in, if I'm in MUT. If not, I'm just going to kind of take my yards and figure out what's working against what they're running, what's not, okay? After those first few plays, you should have a good idea of what your opponent's base defense is. And if you have that playbook knowledge, like we talked about earlier, dig deep in your playbook and find the things that work against what they're running. For example, if they're running in, if they're in 3-3-5, right? 3-3-5 sort of looks like this. You can run against this with certain runs. Other runs aren't going to be great. If you go to like single back dives work well against this. Stretches do not. Certain shotgun runs will work in shotgun dives. Gun tight offset tight end has a wonderful inside zone that's pretty much like a dive that works well against this. If they are setting pressure, for example, let's just go ahead and baseline. See if it'll allow me to do it. If I maybe have to reset the play. Whatever, we'll just kind of fake it. If they're in that 3-4 odd, like that sugar look, right? maybe it's time to go into another formation that can block this. All right, and start playing that cat and mouse game. Like, if you're going to send pressure, I'm going to do this. If you don't send pressure, I have this route to beat that, or I can run the ball. That's when the chess match really starts, after you kind of get a feel for each other, right? So middle of the game is where, after you've gotten a feel for like what they do on defense. Oh, before we go any further, that first drive, always take your points. If it's a 50-50 scenario, 4th and 10, I mean, like, if it's like 4th and long, and it's a 50-50 scenario where you don't feel like you can pick up the first down or you're not 100% sure, just take your points. You have plenty of game left in order to get more points, right? But as we move to that middle part of the game, okay, you're playing that cat and mouse game. Start breaking out things that they haven't seen yet, right? Start breaking out your 3rd, 4th, 5th formation with a few little cute plays to pick, because it's going to be really hard to pick up first downs the longer you go into games against good players, because they're going to start recognizing what you want to do. If you're not in like a gun bunch that has ridiculous route combinations, or you don't have like a Tom Brady that has all those hot routes, then you're going to need to bounce in between formations. So it's always smart to have a plan A all the way to a plan D, a plan F. Have those different formations that you can kind of go to, maybe those 1 or 2 clutch plays that are effective against what they're running, to pick up those first downs, because they're crucial like in the middle of the game, trying to keep up with your opponent, especially because this year's defense is really tough, okay? So if you're getting scored on, which a lot of people are giving up big points, you're going to need to go to something a little extra, right, in order to keep up with your opponent's scoring. Now, when you get late into the game, you should have a game plan of how you're going to attack this person, okay? If you haven't gained the information yet of how you're going to attack this person's defense, then you've pretty much lost, okay? You should be diligent throughout the game. Instead of getting frustrated about maybe not picking up first downs, or maybe you turn the ball over, figure out why, okay? Figure out what you can do to counter what they're doing, and make sure that on that last drive, or those, last quarter or whatever, and you really need to score, that you're taking everything that you've learned and applying it, okay? For example, I go into a game, or I've been going into a lot of games where people will run the pinch buck stuff, but they'll adjust out of it. They'll make certain zone coverage adjustments. So when I'll go compression, let's just go ahead and audible into gun tight offset. And they do something like this. All right. What I usually do from this throughout the game is I'll motion out like slants, corners, posts, all that stuff to try to avoid the press. But then people will start doing things like they'll be putting this guy in a cloud flat. If you don't take notice of that earlier on in the game, you're going to be in a really bad spot late in the game, and you're going to be throwing picks, okay? So if you motion snap something earlier and he's in a cloud flat, now it's time to motion snap that on a streak and then get your touchdown, okay? Also, last drive, bread drive, you need to score. It is perfectly okay to, if you have the time, run the ball a couple times. If they're in something like coverage defense, like a dollar, quarters, something like that. Running is super effective in this year's Madden. So say they're in like big dime, and they're making a lot of crazy adjustments, pulling their linebacker back, and they're in cover 2 to try to protect the middle third. Make sure that you run the ball every now and then, because especially this year's game, the juiced pass rushers, when you pass commit, they're going to be wreaking havoc on your offensive line. It's going to be really tough for you to throw the ball if they have really good pass rushers. The second thing, it's okay to take a sack or throw the ball away. You don't have to force anything. If you force something and turn the ball over, the game's over. You don't get another chance, all right? So basically what I'm telling you is be safe with the ball, okay? When you're in between those numbers, there's a lot of space to throw the ball. You just got to find it, all right? And another little quick tip, too, is if you have, it doesn't even matter if you have a mobile quarterback or not. If you're getting pressure, what you can do is hit left trigger run backwards to the left or the right to avoid the pressure, and if there's nothing open and you don't have a mobile throw on the run quarterback, tap left trigger again to pull your icon up and then throw that ball away, hitting the right stick, okay? Live to fight another down. Don't be throwing aggressive catches unless you have to on the bread drive. Now, once you get into the red zone, the windows for throwing are going to, running, scoring in general is a lot harder in the red zone. It's going to be more difficult for you if you're using compression. I can promise you that. Gun bunch is not nearly as effective in the red zone inside the 10 as it is in between the numbers, okay? If they're running man coverage, it's even harder because those routes that typically get open against man coverage are longer routes. They can play super aggressive on those slants, those drags, anything like that. So make sure that you have something spread out, okay, where they can't cover everything in such a short little compressed area with their user. And also, don't forget about your quarterback's legs. If they haven't been putting a spy out throughout the game and you've been noticing that, the quarterback is super hard to tackle anywhere really, but it's very difficult to tackle the quarterback in the red zone. Especially when your opponent knows the game is on the line, they tend to be like super aggressive running at the quarterback, and you can kind of swerve them a little bit. All right. Excuse me, pardon me. The last thing that I want to recommend is once you get onto that bread drive, all right, and you're in the red zone and you're in prime position to score, now is the time where you can start taking those one-on-one shots because it's a lot safer, especially if you're throwing it to the sideline. Don't take those one-on-one shots over the middle because it's going to get tipped and you have no idea where the ball is going to go. It's going to go most likely into somebody's hands, all right? The defender's hands, not yours. So take your shots one-on-one in the red zone towards the sideline. If you start throwing over the middle in the red zone and you don't have a guy that's wide open or you're not high pointing it, one of two things is going to happen. You're going to get picked off, or you're going to catch it, and you're going to get crushed and fumble, okay? Or you're going to get hit in the red zone, and they're just going to drop it, okay? So try to focus your routes more towards the outside, where there's less defenders, all right? That's pretty much it for the general offensive strategy part. Like I said before we even got started, find something that fits your identity. Okay, find a scheme that you really like and you think you're good at, and then build on it. Keep building on it. Don't stop, okay? Because there's always a different scenario to each and every game that you're going to run into that you're going to wish you had to play if you hadn't left. Guys, that's it. Make sure you check me out on stream. The Green Bay Packers scheme that I run is pretty in-depth. You can probably learn a lot just from watching me run this. Also, check out these other pro players and how they run their offense, and not just the money plays that they use, the things they do in different scenarios, and I promise you will be a better player on offense.